My name is Mia Anderson, a 25-year-old stay-at-home mom. I've been married for 2 years. Until now, I have been living with my husband Daniel, who is 3 years older than me, and we recently had a baby boy. To recover after giving birth, I've been staying at my family's home. It's been a month since I came back, and during this time, my grandfather, who had a chronic illness, passed away. It was as if he had been waiting to hold his great-grandson, Tom, in his arms one last time. After spending peaceful moments together, he quietly departed. The funeral will be held here at my grandfather's beloved house. Since morning, I've been calling Daniel several times, but I haven't been able to reach him at all.
What could Lisa be doing? She's not even answering her phone.
What? Lisa, too?
Daniel isn't answering either?
My mom and I exchanged troubled glances as we hurriedly prepared for the funeral. Finally, just before the service was about to start, I managed to get in touch with Daniel. Daniel, where are you? What are you doing? Unbothered by my urgent tone, Daniel casually replied over the phone.
I'm on a nice trip with Mom.
What? I was bewildered because right at that moment, his mom was walking through the front door.
Hey, remember how Mom took care of you when you fainted before giving birth?
But
I'm showing my gratitude and giving her some time to relax. Really, you should be here too, but I'm taking care of it myself.
but, Daniel, your mom and some of your colleagues just arrived for the funeral.
Wait, what?
As Daniel's voice overlapped with the shocked sound of a woman's voice, I heard her exclaim,
Whose funeral?
My grandfather's.
A funeral for your grandfather?
From the other side of the phone, I heard a familiar voice repeating after Daniel.
No way. Grandpa? I thought he'd hold on a bit longer.
What are we going to do?
There seemed to be a hint of panic on the other end of the line.
Mia, it must have been tough for you. By the way, where is Daniel?
Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, who had already greeted my parents, turned to me with a puzzled look. Well, apparently, he's off enjoying a parent-child trip with you.
Huh? What are you talking about?
Daniel said he wanted to show his appreciation for all the help you gave me before the baby came. The confusion on my mother-in-law's face quickly turned to a look of realization.
Let me have the phone for a second, will you?
I handed my phone over to her, noting the serious expression on her face. Behind her, Daniel's boss and a few other coworkers exchanged glances.
Hello, Daniel. What exactly is going on?
The quiet anger in her voice began to ripple through those around us.
Well,
Daniel's flustered voice was barely audible.
What happened? Is something wrong?
Well, I explained the situation to my mom, who was holding baby Tom, and also filled her in about my sister, who hadn't been reachable. I'm not sure where they are, but it sounds like we'll be able to reach them soon.
What do you mean by that?
My dad, who had joined us, looked at the phone in my mother-in-law's hand with a questioning expression. It seems like Lisa and Daniel are together somewhere. My parents' faces changed as this realization hit them, and the family members nearby began to murmur. Daniel's coworkers, looking uneasy, showed conflicted expressions as they watched the scene unfold. I lifted Tom from my mom's arms. Amidst a tense and uneasy atmosphere. While I tried to calm Tom, my mind drifted back to everything that had happened up to now. It was just a little over a month ago. Even though I was in my 9th month of pregnancy, my morning sickness had been severe, making it difficult to go about my day. When I told Daniel about how nauseous I felt and how I kept vomiting, he didn't really get it.
isn't it just morning sickness?
That was always his response, no matter what I said.
Maybe it's all in your head. You're just being lazy, aren't you?
he would brush it off with cold remarks like that. I talked to the women at work, and they said it usually clears up after the first trimester, as if that would solve anything. Yeah, sure, for a lot of people, it does get better in that period. But there are still people like me who struggle with it even in the later stages. I tried to argue, but he wouldn't listen.
You're just babying yourself. I come home exhausted from work, and you keep groaning and retching right in front of me while I'm trying to eat. You're ruining my meals. I'm the one who feels like throwing up.
Those were the cruel words he started throwing at me. Before getting pregnant, I had been so happy with him, which made his words even more shocking. I thought he'd be thrilled when we found out we were expecting. I imagined him lovingly patting my growing belly alongside me, because I believed that the pain and sadness I felt were beyond words. Then finally, that morning came. From the moment I woke up, I felt dizzy. But I didn't want to hear any more harsh words from Daniel, so I forced myself to get up. However, after taking just a few steps, my vision started spinning, and I couldn't stop vomiting. Moments later, I passed out from dehydration. When Daniel found me lying in the hallway, clutching my stomach to protect the baby, the first thing he said was, "Ugh." Then he let out a deep sigh.
Don't sleep in the middle of the floor.
He said that as he stepped over me several times to get ready for work and left for the office. I watched his back as he walked out the front door, my vision blurry. Well, he didn't notice my weak voice, and the door shut mercilessly. I heard the sound of the lock turning. Call an ambulance. Tears filled my eyes as I thought this, but Daniel had locked the door behind him. Even if emergency responders came, they wouldn't be able to get in. I have to do something for the baby. With that thought, I managed to pull my phone from my pocket to call my mom for help. I had her saved as Mom in my contacts.
Yes?
Maybe it was the relief of hearing her voice that caused it. But I lost consciousness right after that. The next thing I knew, I was lying in a hospital bed. To my surprise, though, it was my mother-in-law, not my mom, sitting beside my bed. "Why are you here?" I asked without thinking, and she looked at me with a puzzled expression.
You're the one who called me.
"What? But how?" When I checked the phone lying next to my pillow, I saw that I had indeed called her instead. I realized that I had accidentally called my mother-in-law instead of my mom, as they were both saved under similar names. "I'm so sorry. I meant to call my mom." I tried to sit up to apologize, but she firmly pressed my shoulders back down onto the bed. Looking down at me with an annoyed expression, she muttered irritably,
If you've got enough energy to move, you must be fine.
With just those words, my mother-in-law left the hospital room. I've upset her again. That thought crossed my mind, and I felt a wave of discouragement. Thinking back, my relationship with her had been rocky even before the marriage. Daniel originally worked at a client company of my dad's. When they visited our company, his mother accompanied his company's CO as the CO's secretary. She'd been the secretary when my grandfather was CO, earning his trust, and was close to my father as well, even from a young age. 20 years ago, she divorced and has since raised Daniel on her own, a truly admirable woman. I had just joined my father's company and only exchanged a few words with her when I served them tea.
I'd love it if someone like her could marry my son.
That's what she apparently said afterward, according to my dad. I wasn't sure what she liked about me, but I went along with my dad's suggestion and agreed to matchmaking with Daniel, and that's how our relationship began. But it was during our engagement when I was invited over and found myself cooking with his mom. She was staring at my hands as she suddenly asked.
Have you never cooked before?
The unexpected question made me freeze. "Well, no. I've always lived at home, and my mom usually does the cooking," I replied honestly.
Huh. But if you're about to get married and become a mom yourself, why don't you know how to do anything?
I couldn't say anything as she criticized me.
Today, just handle the dishes, will you?
She said in an exasperated voice, and I felt so down because of her words and attitude. That experience spurred me to start taking cooking lessons. After that, she stopped commenting on my cooking. But even after we were married, she would often find things to criticize.
You don't know how to clean properly. This isn't the right way to iron. When a husband looks worn out after marriage, that's the wife's fault.
Whenever we visited her, she would say things like this, looking at Daniel.
It's just because we're adjusting to our new life together.
Daniel would try to explain, but she'd never listen and kept finding fault with me. And then, after I got pregnant, she started coming over more often.
Stop wandering around looking like a ghost.
Since I was struggling with terrible nausea, she'd insistently lead me to the bedroom. But don't you have work?
Today's my day off. I need to use up my vacation days.
With that, she wouldn't let me leave the bedroom. She took care of meals, laundry, and cleaning. But I just felt guilty.
Now that you're in your second trimester, it seems like you're doing better.
After Daniel told her that I didn't need help and then I ended up fainting from the nausea, I guess it's only natural that my mother-in-law would be angry. As I mulled this over, a doctor accompanied by a nurse entered the hospital room.
How are you feeling?
Much better, thank you.
That's good to hear. It seems you became dehydrated due to your nausea. With your due date coming up, it might be best if you remain here until delivery.
Oh, I see. A bit surprised, I still thought it was probably safer for the baby this way. Sorry, baby, for being such a weak mom. I patted my belly, silently apologizing, and turned to the nurse. I'll call my mom to bring my things for the hospital stay.
Oh, your mother-in-law mentioned earlier that she'd take care of it.
The nurse said, which surprised me. Didn't she leave already? Slightly skeptical, I waited, and sure enough, a few hours later, my mother-in-law came back into the room, arms full of bags. Thank you so much, really. I'm so sorry to trouble you with all of this. I apologized to her, saying I could have my mom bring my things, but she cut me off, irritated.
What are you saying? It would be a disgrace to the Anderson family if their daughter-in-law was left to faint. Mia, are you trying to embarrass us?
No, I didn't mean.
Then don't worry yourself with unnecessary thoughts. Just rest quietly.
Thank you. Reluctantly, I drank the apple juice she had grated by hand in silence, feeling the awkwardness between us. When Daniel finally came by later, I have to admit I was relieved not to be alone with her anymore.
If you were feeling that bad, you could have just told me.
Daniel's face softened with concern, his anger giving way. But just as I tried to explain that I had told him, he interrupted.
You were just trying to spare me the worry, weren't you?
I looked at Daniel, who was holding my hand, then glanced at my mother-in-law. As soon as our eyes met, she quickly looked away. I really can't make her any angrier. Yeah, sorry and thank you. Wanting to keep things calm in front of my mother-in-law, I murmured my thanks, though a pang of frustration lingered. She let out a loud sigh, clearly annoyed. After staying in the hospital and resting, I successfully delivered a healthy baby boy. A week after giving birth, I was discharged and returned to my family's home, only to be surprised. My sister Lisa, who had moved back home after her divorce last year, wasn't there. Where's Lisa?
She suddenly said she wanted to live alone again and left a few days ago.
My mom replied, and to be honest, I felt relieved. Ever since her divorce a year ago, I had felt her jealous gaze on me. Especially since I became pregnant, Her look seemed to go beyond envy, almost into resentment. Thanks to my sister deciding to live on her own, I was able to relax and spend time at my parents' house without feeling like I was intruding. I could even show my grandfather, who was resting at home, his great-grandson's face.
When I heard you were hospitalized from the nausea, I was really shocked. But I'm so relieved you're okay now.
My mom murmured this as she watched my grandfather, still lying down, happily holding his great-grandson in his arms. What? Did Daniel call you?
What are you talking about? It was his mom who contacted us on the day you were admitted. She apologized so many times that I almost felt guilty for making her feel that way.
Wait, really?
Yes, she reassured me, saying she'd personally take responsibility and care for you through to delivery. She even showed concern for us since we're looking after your grandfather.
You mean Daniel's mom?
Yes, she thought I'd be worried, so she updated me every day on how you were doing.
What? Why would she be?
I've never heard her say a single bad thing about you. She's only had praise.
I looked at my mom in disbelief. As I thought about it, memories of everything my mother-in-law had done for me came back. From the beginning, even though she warned me about things I couldn't do, he never abandoned me. She had taught me how to iron and clean, firmly but thoroughly. Even during the rough first months of my pregnancy, she had let me rest, though she wasn't always gentle about it.
When you called her while you were fainting, she said she felt grateful you relied on her, but she did mention that she sensed you'd meant to call your own mom. She sounded a little sad about that. She reassured me not to worry, saying she'd take good care of you on behalf of your mom.
Really, my mom patted me on the back as I felt my voice shake.
She's the one who wanted you as her daughter-in-law. Just trust her and lean on her.
I see, I answered, a small smile breaking through. When I go home, maybe I'll invite her over. I could even ask her to help take care of Tom for a bit, just to rely on her a little. And maybe I'll serve her one of my improved home-cooked meals. She'll probably eat it with that same poker face as always.
Well, it looks like you've improved.
Maybe she'll give me a little bit of praise. Or maybe.
Well, you still have a ways to go.
Or perhaps she'll just let out a sigh. Even so, I feel she would eat it all without leaving a bite. With these thoughts in mind, I focused on resting. But a month after returning home, my grandfather, whom we'd been caring for, passed away. From that morning, I'd been trying to call Daniel, but he wouldn't pick up, and he hadn't read any of my messages. My parents were also anxious since we couldn't reach my sister Lisa. But with relatives arriving, there was no time to dwell on it, and we busily started preparing for the funeral at home. Amid all the chaos, I finally managed to get in touch with Daniel just a little while ago. The phone was passed to my mother-in-law.
Come to Mia's family home immediately.
She commanded Daniel sternly.
And pass the phone to Lisa.
Then she handed the phone to my father.
What on earth are you thinking at your age?
My father's booming voice filled the house as he scolded my sister.
Get home right now.
He hung up after this outburst. Lisa and Daniel finally arrived, both now dressed in mourning clothes, just as we were waiting for the burial service to begin.
Explain yourselves.
My father, arms crossed, demanded an answer, and the two of them awkwardly sat down. It was my strong-willed sister who spoke first, not Daniel.
I'm willing to pay any compensation.
She said, glancing briefly at me before turning her attention back to my father.
Dad, I'm going to take over the family business with Daniel. My last husband just wasn't up to the task. But with Daniel, we'll be just fine.
Emboldened by my sister's confidence, Daniel spoke up with the same arrogance.
Mia hasn't been taking care of the house at all since she got pregnant. She used morning sickness as an excuse to lie around and slack off on her responsibilities. That's why I'm leaving her and marrying Lisa.
As I held Tom in my arms, he started to cry, maybe sensing my anger or just picking up on the tense atmosphere. Even with our baby crying, Daniel continued without sparing him a glance.
Ever since we got married, my coworkers keep saying I look older. My mom told me that when a husband starts to look worn down, it's his wife's fault, right?
He turned to his mother for support.
Yes, I did say that, my mother-in-law replied.
Daniel must have thought that meant she was on his side.
That's the kind of wife Mia was.
He twisted his mouth in a sneer and spat out his words. As I rocked Tom, I clenched my teeth, trying to think of a way to respond. But before I could, my mother-in-law spoke up first.
Yes, it's the wife's responsibility if her husband looks worn out, but
Her voice lowered.
when a wife is miserable in a marriage, that's on the husband.
What?
You went off to work every day, leaving your sick wife at home, and then had the nerve to say, "You should have told me if you felt that bad." Do you really need her to tell you? You saw her every day and couldn't tell she was unwell? What a sorry excuse for a husband.
Well,
Daniel's face turned pale as he realized his mother wasn't siding with him. Mom. On the other hand, I felt a quiet relief settle over me. Her words meant more to me than anything my own parents could have said.
And you took parental leave only to run off on an affair? Do you have any explanation? I hear you haven't even come to see your own child since Mia's discharge. Go ahead, explain yourself in front of the CEO and your direct supervisor.
With my mother-in-law's severe words, Daniel glanced at the company president and his department head, then looked down in silence. Well, it figures. He has no right to show his face around here. But then Daniel said something completely absurd.
I'm quitting my job. I'm going to work at Lisa's company.
What?
Excuse me?
As I, along with the CEO, his manager, and even our relatives, watched in stunned silence, Daniel lifted his head. For some reason, his face was brimming with hope and confidence.
I hate to leave my current company hanging, but I need to understand the atmosphere at my new company to really step into a leadership role. I want to hear the voices of my team members firsthand.
He raised a fist as he declared this with enthusiasm, but my mother-in-law stood up.
After all your company has done for you, you have the nerve.
Before she could finish, my father cut in.
I'm afraid that even if you wanted to work here, we wouldn't be able to hire you.
He chuckled coldly.
What? Wait, what?
Daniel looked shocked, as if he hadn't seen that response coming, and I couldn't help but stifle a laugh. Daniel, where exactly did all this confidence come from? As I continued to laugh softly, Daniel's face flushed red.
Stop laughing.
But my father, arms crossed, raised his eyebrows in frustration, his face showing clear disdain for Daniel's idea.
After hearing that you lied to take time off and now want to quit without a valid reason, there's no way I'd hire someone like that.
At this, my sister tried to interject.
Hold on, Dad. He's going to be my husband.
Turning to look at her, my father replied coldly.
What are you talking about? There's no way you'll become CEO either. Anyone who would betray family by stealing her sister's husband isn't someone I trust to lead the people who are practically family here.
That can't be.
While it was only natural to me, this was clearly a harsh shock to my sister and Daniel. Both of them turned pale, slumping to the floor. At that moment, it was obvious that everything they'd built up was crumbling around them. Especially for Daniel, who now had no place at home or at work. It was a dark road ahead.
I was deceived.
Suddenly, Daniel sprang to his feet, shouting, "What?"
Daniel, what are you talking about?
It seemed he didn't hear me or my mother-in-law. He raised his voice, directing his words solely at my father and the CO.
She led me on, saying, "If you marry me, you'll become CEO." I was tricked. I'm a victim too.
Sitting on the floor, my sister looked up at Daniel.
What did you just say?
Mia, tell Dad, I can't go back to the company now. You're in trouble too, right? And think about Tom. What kind of future does he have if his dad is unemployed?
What are you saying?
My sister yelled as she stood up, grabbing Daniel by the collar.
You said you wished you'd married me instead of Mia.
That's because, Lisa, you tricked me.
What? Say that again.
Fine, it's true. I handed Tom over to my mom, who was sitting beside me. Sis, ever since I got married, you've seemed jealous of me. You couldn't stand seeing your less successful little sister in a happy marriage, could you? I said this as I slowly stood up. And when you found out I was pregnant, it made you even angrier, didn't it? My sister's face twisted with resentment as she glared at me. I looked her straight in the eyes, not backing down. That's right. She had always been like this, even as kids. She had to be the center of attention. She couldn't stand it when she wasn't the one chosen. That was just the kind of person she was. That's why you tried to take Daniel from me, right? You figured with my pregnancy, he'd be an easy target?
Humph, look who's talking. It was easy. Daniel told me he doesn't feel even a shred of attraction to you anymore. You spent every day vomiting right in front of him. No wonder he's repulsed.
That's because I'm pregnant. Some women are just that way. I clenched my fists tightly. I don't regret any of it. Even if people say I look pitiful, sick, or unattractive, I was able to give birth to Tom. If that's enough to make him hate me, then so be it.
Well said, Mia.
The first person to agree with me was my mother-in-law. She stood by my side, not by her son's.
I had severe nausea too. Daniel, I threw up so many times during my pregnancy with you, had to leave work early or take sick days, and I was told I was lazy or faking it by plenty of people. But the CO was always understanding. He told me, I remember how tough it was for my own wife when she was pregnant. That's why I decided I'd stay loyal to the company no matter what. The CEO treated me like family, even celebrated with us when you were born. And yet, here you are.
Her voice trembled as she spoke. Taking a deep breath, she then turned to my sister.
Lisa, if you marry Daniel, I will cut ties with him.
What, Mom? No.
Excuse me? Is this because Daniel said he wants to quit your company?
No, that's not it.
My mother-in-law stepped in front of my sister, looking down at her.
It's because you disrespected our CO.
What? What are you talking about?
When the CEO and I visited your company, you were his secretary, weren't you? You were supposed to serve tea to the guests.
That's because Mia had just joined the company at that time, and I thought I'd introduce her.
No, I was near the door outside the conference room, and I heard what you said. Mia, you serve the tea. I'm the daughter of a company president, and that tiny company's CEO isn't worthy of me serving tea.
Oh, what?
Daniel's CO chuckled, while my father turned red with anger.
Lisa, how could you? I am so sorry.
My father deeply apologized to the CEO, but the CEO just laughed heartily.
No, Mr. Anderson, you don't need to apologize. She'll learn her lesson in time, and it will be a painful one.
My mother-in-law looked proudly at the CO. then back at my sister.
But Mia was completely different from her. She showed proper respect, served tea with genuine care, and her greetings were heartfelt. I was impressed to meet a young person with such sincerity these days.
What? So that's what happened. I can't believe she disrespected our seal like that.
Daniel, ever the chameleon, immediately shifted his tone. It was desperate and at this point, almost laughable. What a loser, I muttered softly.
Yeah, what a jerk. Not showing respect to a client's CO.
Daniel, you're no different.
Huh?
There's no place for a man like you as the father of my child. The CEO nodded in agreement with my words.
And we don't need him at our company either.
I feel the same way, certainly not as my son-in-law.
I apologize if this troubles you, Daniel.
No, sir, it's absolutely the right decision.
At this, Daniel kicked his chair over in anger.
You're all just mocking me. So, I never really had a chance at becoming CEO, huh? Even when I tried to do the right thing, nothing would have changed.
That's not true. With that, I did my last duty as his wife. I picked up the chair he had knocked over, set it upright, and dusted it off. If you hadn't betrayed me or given in to my sister's temptations, you could have become the CEO of our company.
What?
My father nodded in agreement.
The right to inherit the company has now passed to Mia. Even without this incident, unless you changed your ways, Lisa, your future in the company was already slipping away.
What is that supposed to mean?
It means you should accept the consequences of your actions.
After the funeral concluded, Daniel's manager patted him on the shoulder.
Get in touch tomorrow. We need to have a talk.
You understand what this means, don't you?
She nodded, stifling a sob.
I'm sorry.
My sister sobbed out her apology, but it was far too late. They crumbled under the weight of their own mistakes, broken in a way different from those around them. Without returning to our home, I divorced Daniel on the spot. Naturally, Daniel's parental leave was revoked, and I heard he had even begged the CEO and his manager to let him stay with the company. But ultimately, he couldn't bear the cold stares and constant whispers and resigned. The severance pay he received was consumed by alimony payments to me. But alimony wasn't all he owed. He also had child support for Tom. Despite his ongoing job search, his high standards are keeping him from finding a stable position. My sister, though not fired, lost her right to inherit the company, and the reasons for her fall from grace quickly spread throughout the company. Her pride couldn't withstand the mocking laughter and the curious stares. Eventually, she quit. Her alimony payments to me came from our grandfather's inheritance. With her savings depleted, she has to move out of the high-end apartment she once rented on her own. She started working at a boutique to make use of her fashion sense, but her inability to humble herself before customers has led to constant complaints. Meanwhile, I'm still at my parents' house, enjoying my own parental leave. My mother-in-law occasionally visits to help care for Tom. She's gotten along well with my mom, and the two of them even go out for lunch together sometimes. They bring back souvenirs and stop by the house afterward. My mother-in-law, as always, is a highly capable secretary. A year from now, I plan to return to my father's company as well,